As for the men, 5 different programs getting first place votes. Syracuse at number 1, Princeton moving up to 3rd after their latest win over Johns Hopkins. North Carolina staying at 4th. Cornell, big jump from 10th to 4th. Penn, 1 and 2, still 9th in the nation. So we bring in Evan Washburn now. Evan, is it too early to play pretender or contender? It's March 2nd, 3rd.
It's never too early to be reckless with the future of some of these programs that are just starting to find themselves and create an identity for the season. So I'm excited. Let's do this. Let's make some people angry.
Now that February's over, why not? Let's start with Princeton, who is in the top 5, of course. Are they a contender or a pretender at this point?
Well, I do want to add some qualifiers. I've got contender as they're going to championship weekend, or I feel confident that they have a team capable of doing so. And pretender would fall more toward the category of quarterfinals, first round, fringe of the tournament. Because all the teams we're going to get into here are really talented and have the potential to do something special this season. But if you ask me right now, if Princeton's a Final Four team, I would say no. I don't like the fact that while you might have the best player in the country in Michael Sowers, you don't have much depth beyond that, or at least proven depth. And that to me is a concern. I think they're having a program redefining season or start to one. But as of early March, I will have them in the pretender category.
So it sounds like their win over Virginia might have been even a little bit more about Virginia than Princeton for you, and a timing type thing in a February game.
Yeah, I think they're a team that can compete and will be able to compete with the likes of Princeton, or excuse me, of Virginia, and some of the top teams in the country and they're going to be tested because the Ivy League looks to just be a monster this year. They're going to be tested into April and May. So I still think that's a great win. It'll be a great win when we're talking tournament selection and all those things. But it's hard for me to see the whole team as one that I can get behind as heading to Philly.
Yeah, and making a run maybe in your eyes of a few. You got to win a few games in a row, obviously, to get there. Let's go to.
They can be clipped so many times in that Ivy League with the likes of Yale, and Cornell looks to be for real. Maybe we'll get to them in a minute here. Harvard's going to be. I mean, it's just the Ivy League's great. It's awesome. It's good to have them back.
Yes, absolutely. How about North Carolina?
I've got North Carolina as a contender. I think they have arguably the best offense, along with Cornell, Syracuse, obviously with that midfield, one of the best offenses in the country. And Chris Gray's been everything that they've hoped he would be, and we saw when we were doing his games in the Patriot League, and that's awesome. I'd like that they got a win against Denver without Gray being at his best. I think that was an important hurdle early in this season to get over. So it shows there's some other guys. Solomon being one of them that can step up. And while their defense isn't where it's going to need to be come May to be a contender, I think they've got talent there that could round into shape, and goaltending that it's at least been solid. And so all those factors have me thinking contender.
Let's stay in the ACC really quickly with Notre Dame now. Contender, pretender,
I've got, I just don't think that there's enough there. And ironically, the defensive side of the ball is to me where the concern is. Just, I think we discussed it, the Jerry Byrne effect of moving on to Harvard. And Ryan Wellner's a really good coach, and I think he'll get that group going. But at least right now, and in that Maryland game, you saw it, that they're still figuring out what's this identity. I'm sure there's a lot of carryover, but he's got to install his system and the way he wants to do things, and some growing pains there. Brian Costabille's a A-lister. Pat Cavanaugh looks to be a really good player. So those are positives, but to me, it feels more like a quarterfinal team right now.
Yeah, Cavanaugh, I think, has played really well for them. Yet to see Costabile really break out. Let's go to Penn now. You mentioned the Ivy League a little bit earlier. Penn at 1-2, the win over Duke, but played probably one of the toughest schedules in America at this point.
I have them as a contender with the greatest qualifier, and maybe this isn't really playing the games to its rule, but we just don't know about Sam Hanley right now. And if he's not going to be a part of this thing this year, if this is a lingering long-term injury, then I would say pretender. But if he's able to come back at some point and be some version of what we've seen over the early portion of his career, then absolutely, I think they're a Final Four team. And it's been cool to see Dylan Gregar, a guy who I've seen all the way going back to his high school days at Severn, really develop into a top-tier player in the Ivy League. So, yeah, schedule's a monster, and they don't have their best player, and that's a problem. But everywhere else, to me, feels like they're built to make a run. They have the experience factor of last year as well.
Has what they've done without Sam Hanley surprised you at all? I know they did lose this past weekend, but they took Penn State to OT.
Yeah, well, I think it was either last week on the show we discussed. I think the biggest takeaway was just that talk about identity. They have one, and it's toughness and the fact that while most teams would use that as an excuse and it would affect your mentality, especially when you're dealing with 18 to 21-year-olds, that your best player is not available, they kind of took it as a chance to prove a lot of people that they could still make some hay and win some games, and they did that. And I should mention, too, that the goaltending's got to improve. That was also on my list. If they're going to be a contender, which I think they could be, they got to get more from that position.
All right, let's finish up now with Cornell. Are they a contender or pretender, Evan? They can put some points on the board.
Can they ever? I was trying to do the quick math, and it made my head hurt. And so I think at this point, I would say, man, it's tough. They were the one kind of go back and forth on. I do think that the face-off position, obviously that came to light this weekend, is a concern. But I think because of that offense and how efficient it can be, I think they could be a contender. Yeah. But I really do feel like the Ivy League is going to kind of be one of those conferences, much like the ACC when it's rolling, but they kind of eat themselves alive. And that could be the case when you think of Cornell and Yale and Penn and Princeton being back. And even I think Dartmouth's won a lot of games right now. I don't think they've played anybody of note, but it's going to be a challenge. But I think Cornell, with a guy like Jeff Teat, and unlike Princeton, have a lot of other guys chipping in as well. That to me is a good sign for what they can do. But they got to figure out the face-offs when they go up against some of the top-tier guys at that position in their own conference, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, between Gallagher at Penn and Erlin at Yale, I mean, that you've got to really do some stuff on the defensive end and then cause a lot of turnovers like we saw UMass. I mean, UMass-Yale, that's the blueprint, right, to beat a team like TD Erlin and Yale.
I think that absolutely, but maybe even more so, Tom. It's just the efficiency on the offensive end because your possessions are going to be limited. There can't be any wasted ones, and that's what makes you confident in a team like Cornell because of their ability to score. And that to me is a good thing. Now we saw Penn State be as historic an offense as we've seen in a number of years last year, and on that similar pace at times this year. And Yale still had that answer with what they were doing at the X. So it'll be a fun thing to see when those two meet up. But I think Cornell's right on that edge. I lean towards contender, but pretender's definitely in the picture as well.
Yeah, it's some big matchups, of course, as we get farther in that Ivy League season. Evan, thanks so much for the time today. We'll talk to you soon, all right?
Absolutely, and you're a contender in my book, Tom, any day.
So are you, Evan. So are you.